A mother's story is never small. It carries the weight of sacrifice and the light of love. When we begin to tell the story of a mother, we are not just recalling events from the past. We are entering into something sacred, something that lives deep within the heart. Think for a moment about your own mother. Think about the nights she stayed awake when you were sick, the mornings she rose before anyone else just to prepare for the day, and the countless times she put her own desires aside so you could have what you needed. That is not a small story. That is a story filled with sacrifice, and sacrifice always carries weight. It is heavy because it comes with a cost, but it shines with love because it is given freely. So many people believe that greatness is measured by position, by wealth, or by fame. But I tell you, the greatest stories are often hidden in kitchens, in small bedrooms, in quiet whispers of a mother praying over her child, or in the worn hands that have worked tirelessly to provide. A mother's greatness is not found in recognition from the world, but in the silent sacrifices that shape the lives of her children. That is why her story is never small. It is larger than we realize, because it has the power to change generations. When we practice listening, especially in English or any language, it's not just about grammar or vocabulary. It's about listening to the heart behind the words. A mother's story teaches us to hear with more than just our ears. It teaches us to hear with compassion. Every sacrifice she made speaks in a language deeper than words. When she denied herself a comfort so you could have a chance at something better, that was her way of saying, "I love you," in a language universal to all people. No dictionary can capture that. No textbook can explain it fully. You simply have to feel it. I remember stories of mothers who walked miles just to bring water for their families, carrying not only the bucket, but the hope that her children would live another day. I think of mothers who worked long hours in factories, in fields, in offices, and then came home to cook a meal and check on their children's homework, never letting exhaustion steal the smile from their faces. These are not small stories. They are epic, though they may never be written in history books. They are woven into the very fabric of who we are, and when we listen to them, we are shaped by them. The weight of a mother's sacrifice is not meant to crush her children, but to lift them. She bears the burden so we can walk lighter. She carries the weight so we can move forward, and in doing so, she teaches us what love really means. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not boastful. Love does not demand its own way. Love gives even when it hurts, and who embodies that more clearly than a mother? And yet, along with the weight, there is light. A mother's love is not dark. It is not bitter. It is not heavy without hope. It is light because it shines through every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every small moment of joy. The light of a mother's love is what guides a child when they feel lost. It is what brings comfort when the world feels cold. It is what reminds us, no matter how far we wander, that there is someone who believes in us, who sees us not for our failures but for our possibilities. That light is not dimmed by time, nor is it extinguished by distance. It remains glowing quietly, calling us back to the truth of who we are. So when I say that a mother's story is never small, I mean it with all my heart. It is a story of sacrifice, yes, but also of radiant love. It is a story that teaches us about endurance, about hope, about faith, about giving without asking for anything in return. And when we listen to such a story, not only do we learn to understand English or any language we may be studying, we also learn to understand the deeper language of humanity itself. Her story carries weight. Her story carries light, and if you carry it with you, it will change the way you live. When we listen to such a story, we are not only learning words, we are learning life itself. Words by themselves can be empty if they do not carry meaning, if they do not touch the heart. You can memorize every line of grammar, every rule in a book. But unless those words are connected to life, they will not stay with you. When we open our ears to a story, especially one as personal and powerful as the story of a mother, we are doing more than practicing English. We are allowing those words to take root in our soul. And when words take root, they become part of who we are. Think of it this way. A child first learns to speak not by studying rules, but by listening. He hears his mother's voice, he feels the rhythm of her words, he senses the love in her tone. Long before he knows how to spell or how to write, he knows how to understand because he has listened. In the same way, when we listen to stories told from the heart, we are learning to hear with understanding, not just with the mind. That kind of listening is life-giving. It shapes character. It molds the spirit. The story of a mother is filled with moments of joy and sorrow, moments of struggle and triumph. Every detail of her story teaches us something about patience, about sacrifice, about love that does not quit. And when we listen closely, those lessons are carried into our own lives. We learn how to face hardship with courage because she did. We learn how to give even when we have little because she gave. We learn that true strength is not loud or proud, but quiet and enduring because that is how she lived. These lessons are life itself, spoken through the simple words of her story. Too many people today rush through life without really listening. They hear the sound of words, but they miss the meaning. They can repeat sentences, but they never stop to let the truth sink in. That is why listening to a mother's story is so important. It forces us to slow down. It invites us to reflect. It teaches us that listening is not just about the ear. It is about the heart, because when the heart listens, it remembers. And when the heart remembers, it changes the way we live. You can sit in a classroom and learn English from a book, but if you never connect those words to real life, they remain lifeless. But if you listen to a story, one that carries love, sacrifice, and hope, you are learning a language that goes deeper. You are learning not just how to speak, but how to feel, how to understand, how to live. That is why stories are so powerful. They don't just teach us language, they teach us life. Think of the mother who tells her child a story at night, perhaps a simple story about her own life, about growing up, about the struggles she faced and the choices she made. To that child, those words are more than vocabulary. They are lessons of courage. They are lessons of faith. They are lessons of love. That child grows up not just with knowledge of words, but with knowledge of life. And years later, when challenges come, it is that story told long ago that gives him strength to endure. Listening to a story like that is more than education. It is transformation. It builds a bridge between language and living. It teaches us that the words we speak matter, not because they follow rules, but because they carry truth. And when truth is carried in words, those words can change lives. So let us not treat listening as a small thing. Let us not see it as just another exercise in learning English. Listening to a story, especially one as meaningful as the story of a mother, is one of the greatest lessons we can have. Because in that story, we hear the heartbeat of life itself. And when we listen with open hearts, we discover that words are not just sounds. They are seeds, seeds that grow into hope, into courage, into love. That is what we truly learn when we listen. The bond between a child and a mother is a language stronger than any textbook. It is a language that does not need to be taught in a classroom, yet every child understands it. It is spoken without grammar, without rules, and yet it communicates more powerfully than the most carefully written sentence. From the very first breath of life, A child recognizes the voice, the touch, the presence of a mother. That bond speaks before words are formed. It tells the child, you are safe, you are loved, you belong. No textbook can give that assurance. No dictionary can define it fully. It is the language of love, and it is written on the human heart. When we think about learning, we often focus on books, on lessons, on rules. And yes, those things are important. But the most important lessons we ever learn are not taught by books. They are taught by relationships. And the first, strongest, most shaping relationship is the bond between mother and child. That bond shapes character, it builds confidence, it teaches compassion. A mother does not need to explain sacrifice in words. Her life explains it. She does not need to define love in sentences. Her actions define it. She speaks the language of the heart, and it is understood without translation. This bond is not bound by culture or by wealth or by education. It is universal, whether in a crowded city or a quiet village, whether in times of peace or in times of hardship. A mother's bond with her child communicates strength and tenderness. It is a language older than time itself. Long before a child learns to read or write, he learns to trust, to hope, to believe, all because of that bond. And when life grows difficult, it is often the memory of that bond that carries him through. Think for a moment about the small ways a mother speaks this language. When she wipes away a tear, she is saying, I am here. When she stays awake through the night while her child is ill, she is saying, your life matters more than my rest. When she works quietly day after day without asking for thanks, she is saying, my love is not conditional, it is constant. None of those words may be spoken, but the message is heard clearly. That is why I say the bond is stronger than any textbook. It communicates not only knowledge but life itself. Textbooks can teach us definitions, but they cannot teach us devotion. They can show us examples, but they cannot embody sacrifice. They can explain the meaning of love, but they cannot give the experience of being loved. A mother's bond does what no book can do. It enters the heart. It molds the spirit. It transforms a child from the inside out. And it stays long after the lessons of books are forgotten. This is why stories of mothers move us so deeply. They remind us of a language we all know, even if we cannot describe it. They remind us of the invisible thread that connects one generation to the next. And when we listen to those stories, we are not just learning words. We are learning the very meaning of love, sacrifice, and grace. That bond becomes the first teacher, the one that sets the foundation for every other lesson in life. A child who knows this bond carries a strength that cannot easily be broken, because deep inside he knows he is loved, and when a child knows he is loved, he can face challenges with courage. He can meet failure without fear. He can walk into the unknown with hope. That is the power of this bond. It gives the child wings even while holding him close. It teaches him to stand even while lifting him when he falls. It is a love that corrects but never condemns. It is a love that disciplines but always forgives. And I believe that when we stop and truly listen to this bond, when we reflect on what it means, it can teach all of us, not just children, how to live better, how to love deeper, how to care more for one another. Because the language spoken between a mother and her child is not only for them, it is a message to the whole world. It says that love is greater than fear, that sacrifice is greater than selfishness, that hope is greater than despair. That is why the bond between a mother and her child is stronger than any textbook. It does not simply inform the mind, it transforms the heart. In every simple story, there is a lesson that shapes our heart, not just our mind. We live in a world that often measures wisdom by how complex something sounds, by how many books a person has read, or by how many degrees they hold. But the truth is, the lessons that carry the deepest power are often found in the simplest of stories. A child listening to his mother tell how she faced hardship, how she endured with faith and hope, may not realize it at the time, but that story is planting seeds that will shape his character for life. Those seeds do not rest in the mind alone. They reach down into the heart where real change takes place. Simple stories have a way of stripping away all the noise, all the distractions, and speaking directly to the core of who we are. They remind us of what truly matters. A story doesn't need big words or clever phrases to touch us. It only needs truth. When you hear about a mother who gave up her meal so her child could eat, you may not remember every detail of the scene, but you remember the feeling. That story teaches sacrifice. When you hear about a father walking miles in the cold to find medicine for his family, you may not be able to quote his words, but you remember the lesson of love that does not count the cost. That is the power of a simple story. It imprints truth on the heart in a way that lectures and arguments never can. And when it comes to learning, especially learning a language, we must remember this. We don't just learn to know, we learn to live. Words without life remain shallow, but words tied to stories carry meaning, and meaning shapes us. A student can memorize 100 new words in English, but if he never learns how those words connect to the real struggles and hopes of life, then those words remain empty. But when those same words are carried in a story about love, about sacrifice, about courage, they become alive. They are no longer just vocabulary. They are lessons for the heart. Think about the great stories passed down through families, generation after generation. They are not told to show off knowledge. They are told to teach values. A grandmother tells how she endured hardship, not to impress her grandchildren, but to prepare them for the day they too will face trials. A father shares how he failed and got back up, not to relive his mistakes, but to show his children that falling is not the end. These stories are not wrapped in complicated language, yet their impact is greater than anything written in a textbook. Because they are simple, they are remembered, and because they are true, they shape the heart. And isn't it true that our lives themselves are stories? Every choice, every act, every word becomes part of the story we will leave behind. And whether our story is told in grand detail or in quiet remembrance, it will shape someone else. That is why the simple story matters. It is never just a story. It is a seed planted, a light passed on, a lesson that continues to live in someone else long after the words are spoken. We should never underestimate the stories we tell or the stories we hear, for in them are hidden treasures. Sometimes we go searching for wisdom in the biggest places, but often the wisdom that changes us most is found in the ordinary, in the quiet, in the simple. A story told at a kitchen table, a story whispered at bedtime, a story remembered in tears or in laughter. These are the ones that shape us the most. And the lessons they teach are not about facts and figures, but about love, faith, perseverance, kindness, forgiveness. These are the lessons that make us human, the lessons that shape our hearts. So when you listen to a simple story, don't dismiss it as something small. Don't think it's just for children or just a way to pass the time. Listen carefully, because in that story may be the very lesson you need. It may not only sharpen your mind, it may soften your heart, and a softened heart is where real wisdom begins. In every simple story, there is a lesson that shapes our heart, not just our mind. Learning English is important, but learning compassion through stories is eternal. Language is a powerful tool. It helps us to connect with one another, to share ideas, to build bridges across cultures and nations. English, especially in our world today, opens doors of opportunity, gives access to education, to work, to knowledge that can change a person's future. Yes, learning English is important. But as valuable as that is, if we gain language and lose compassion, then we have gained very little. Because language alone can reach the ear, but compassion reaches the heart, and it is the heart that truly transforms lives. Think about it. A person can master every rule of grammar, can speak with perfect pronunciation, can fill a room with eloquent words, and yet if his heart is cold, those words fall flat. They may impress the mind, but they will not move the soul. On the other hand, a simple story told with compassion, even if spoken in broken English, can touch a person deeply, can inspire change, can heal wounds. Words may teach us information, but compassion teaches us how to live. And when stories carry compassion, they plant seeds that last far beyond the classroom, far beyond the exam, far beyond the temporary struggles of learning a language. Stories are the vessels through which compassion is passed from one generation to the next. When we hear the story of a mother who went hungry so her child could eat, we are not just hearing about hunger, we are learning compassion. When we listen to the story of someone who forgave even when forgiveness seemed impossible, we are not just learning vocabulary, we are learning the eternal lesson of mercy. These stories do not simply fill our minds with words, they shape our hearts with compassion. And that lesson is eternal because compassion never grows old, never loses its value, never becomes outdated. In every corner of the world, in every culture, stories of compassion endure. They outlive wars, they outlive governments, they outlive empires. They remain because the human heart longs for them. We may forget the rules of language as time passes, but we will never forget the story that taught us kindness. We may stumble over words as we age, but we will not lose the memory of the compassion shown to us when we needed it most. That is why I say compassion through stories is eternal. It lasts when everything else fades. Even in the process of learning English, stories are the key that make the language alive. A student may study hundreds of new words in isolation and quickly forget them. But if those same words are woven into a story of compassion, into the account of a mother's sacrifice, into the memory of a child's courage, they will not be forgotten. Because compassion gives life to language, it gives meaning to words, it binds knowledge to the heart. And when knowledge is bound to the heart, it becomes wisdom. And let us be honest, the world today does not suffer from a lack of knowledge. We have more knowledge than ever before. What we lack is compassion. What we need is not just people who can speak many languages, but people who can speak the universal language of love, of kindness, of understanding. And stories are how we learn that language. They remind us that beneath all our differences of tongue and culture, we are human beings created with the same need for love, the same longing for hope, the same call to show mercy. So yes, let us work hard to learn English. Let us study with diligence and discipline, because language is a gift that opens doors. But let us also remember that without compassion, all those open doors lead to empty rooms. What fills those rooms with light is the lesson of compassion, learned through the simple yet eternal stories of love and sacrifice. Learning English is important, but learning compassion through stories is eternal. The story of a mother reminds us that true greatness is found in humble acts of love. Too often, when people think of greatness, they imagine the bright lights, the applause, the headlines. They imagine power, wealth, influence, or prestige. But the truth is, greatness is not measured by how many people know your name. Greatness is measured by how much love you have given, how many lives you have touched, how faithfully you have served when nobody was watching. And no story captures that better than the story of a mother. Think about the way she lives. Day after day, she wakes before anyone else, not for recognition, not for praise, but simply because her family needs her. She prepares meals not because it brings her glory, but because it brings strength to the ones she loves. She listens when no one else has time to listen. She comforts when no one else notices the hurt. She gives when she has little left to give. These are not acts that make headlines, but they are acts that make a home. They are not written in history books, but they are written on the hearts of her children. And that, my friends, is greatness. True greatness does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It whispers in the gentle touch of a mother's hand on a worried brow. It whispers in the quiet prayers she lifts up when her child is in trouble. It whispers in the sacrifices no one ever sees, sacrifices that shape lives, sacrifices that build character, sacrifices that leave a legacy. This is why the story of a mother is so powerful, because in her story we learn that greatness is not about being served, but about serving. It is easy to overlook these humble acts. The world passes them by because they don't look spectacular, but heaven sees them. The child who grows up remembering the warmth of his mother's love does not forget it. The adult who recalls her wisdom and her sacrifice carries it as a guiding light, and when he faces struggles in his own life, he remembers the quiet strength of his mother, and it gives him courage to go on. That is greatness that outlives the moment. When you listen to a story about a mother, you begin to see that true greatness is not found in pride but in humility. She does not demand credit. She does not insist on recognition. She does not boast of what she has done. She simply loves, and love, given humbly and freely, is the greatest power the world has ever known. It builds where nothing else can build. It heals where nothing else can heal. It endures when everything else fades away. And here is something we must remember. Greatness is not only found in what the world calls great. A single act of kindness, a single moment of compassion, a single sacrifice made in love can be greater than all the fame and fortune this world has to offer. A mother who holds her child through the night when he is sick, who whispers words of comfort when he feels afraid, who gives her strength so her family can have hope. That mother is greater than any king, any ruler, any celebrity. Because she is shaping lives with love, and love is eternal. We live in a world that chases success, that glorifies power, that measures worth by possessions. But the story of a mother brings us back to the truth. Success without love is empty. Power without compassion is dangerous. Wealth without humility is meaningless. A mother teaches us that greatness is not about climbing higher, but about stooping lower to lift someone else up. It is not about being first, but about putting others ahead of yourself. It is not about having much, but about giving all you can. So when we hear the story of a mother, let us not dismiss it as something ordinary. Let us honor it as the very picture of greatness. For in her humble acts of love, she reveals what the world cannot always see, that the greatest among us are not those who demand to be served, but those who choose to serve with love. The story of a mother reminds us that true greatness is found in humble acts of love. Thank you for listening to these simple yet powerful stories that remind us of sacrifice, love, and compassion. Remember, the greatest lessons in life are often found in the quiet acts of a mother's heart. Carry these stories with you because they shape more than words. They shape life itself. If this touched your heart and helped your English practice, share it with someone who needs encouragement. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories, and join me next time for another journey of learning and inspiration.